The year of our Lord 2008 was quite the 12-month period. Barack Obama was elected President of the United States, The Dark Knight was released in cinemas, and the world suffered a massive financial crash that we are still recovering from. Good times. Also on the decline was the WWE product, which was still in what many consider to be one of its worst creative periods. John Cena still ran riot at the top, giant immovable monsters were pushed well above their pay grade, and as you're about to see, the women's division was in dire straits. There were some highlights from 2008, don't get me wrong. WrestleMania 24 was a pretty great show with highlights including a stellar Money in the Bank ladder match and Ric Flair's last ever outing. Definitely last ever outing. We also got the Undertaker vs Edge feud that culminated inside Hell in a Cell, while Chris Jericho and Shawn Michaels had one of the defining rivalries of the decade. Other than that though, a lot of it was pretty pants, especially these 10 miserable bouts. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are the 10 worst WWE matches of 2008. Join us. Number 10, Edge vs Triple H vs Vladimir Kozlov at Survivor Series. Under the tried and tested gimmick of being from Russia, Vladimir Kozlov debuted as a monster heel in April 2008. His undefeated streak lasted most of the year, leading to a WWE Championship match with Triple H at Survivor Series. Jeff Hardy was meant to be involved, but in kayfabe was found unconscious at his hotel during the event. This meant the Game and Kozlov were left to wrestle the match by themselves, and it was laborious. The two men had zero chemistry, and the match mostly consisted of rest holds and Kozlov looking quite angry. Fans let management know exactly how they felt about this decision, chanting "We want Hardy" and "boring" at various intervals. Things brightened up a smidge when Edge was announced as Hardy's replacement about 10 minutes into the match. And then Jeff came out anyway and started attacking people with chairs. Unfortunately, this match was as dull as dishwater, and Kozlov never got a sniff of the main event again. Number 9, Mark Henry vs KANE vs Big Show at Night of Champions. WWE's version of ECW was on its last legs in 2008, and matches like this did not help. A three-way for the brand's title saw defending champion KANE take on Big Show and Mark Henry in a match so meaty it could put a butcher's out of business. Unfortunately, at this point in time, Show was about as mobile as the Himalayan mountain range, and Henry wasn't exactly in his House of Pain era yet. It was very much up to the Big Red Machine to keep this one interesting, so obviously, WWE decided to have KANE taken out early and leave the other two to hit each other for most of the match. The Giants couldn't carry this match if it had had handles on it, and the crowd lost interest almost as soon as KANE went down. Number 8, Team Phoenix vs Team McCool at Survivor Series. Of the 14 pay-per-view events that WWE ran in 2008, only 5 of them had women's singles matches on them. Some featured no women at all, but others resorted to clumping them together into teams and making them fight for no real rhyme or reason. Survivor Series was no exception to this rule, as a team from Raw led by Beth Phoenix battled a team from SmackDown led by Michelle McCool. There were some talented workers in this match, including the two team captains, Mickie James and Natalya. However, it also featured some less heralded in-ring workers like Kelly Kelly and Jillian Hall. At least she didn't have her award at this point. The contest was utterly heatless, a prototype for the pointless Raw vs SmackDown battles we would see in the 2010s. It also got super sloppy at points as the women tried to cram 9 eliminations into a 9.5-minute match. In the end, the Glamazon stood tall for her crew, and, well, it's just a shame that nobody really cared. These multi-women matches often felt pretty much identical. We won't say anything more about this one for now because we're moving on to number 7, the 12-woman tag team match at Backlash. The lineup of this encounter from Backlash is almost identical to the one at Survivor Series, except it subbed out Maurice for Layla, Ashley Mazzaro, and Cherry. If you don't remember who Cherry is, don't worry, you won't be the only one. Another let's get all the women on the card and have Jerry Lawler commentate match. This one had less experienced wrestlers and even less time for them to get over. The dozen women in this match had just over 30 seconds each between them to get their spots in and tell a cohesive story. It didn't exactly work. Whilst Beth, Mickie and Natalya all did well together, most other combinations in this match were about as compatible as electricity and a fish tank. Number 6, the Mini Royal Rumble on Raw. WWE's poor treatment of their female performers is matched only by their treatment of little people. It of course takes great dedication to become a wrestler whatever your size or shape, and little people have a long and varied history across the wrestling world. Not that you would know this if you only ever watched WWE, as they were almost always used as the butt of the joke. Hornswoggle had already qualified for the Royal Rumble when his dad, Mr. McMahon, made him compete in what he called a mini Royal Rumble. A condensed version of the classic match, the man in the green suit took on mini versions of famous wrestlers including KANE, Mankind, and Mr. Kennedy. There was even a gag about how the Kennedy substitute couldn't reach the microphone when it descended from the ceiling. Classy stuff. The unfunny comedy continued with the final entrant in the match, the Great Khali. Who didn't see that one coming? The bout ended in a disqualification when Finlay ran in and attacked the Giants. At least, I think it ended in a DQ. The whole thing just sort of faded out. Number 5, the Santa's Little Helpers tag team match at Armageddon. Armageddon was the final show of the year and took place just a few weeks out from Christmas. Naturally, you guessed it, WWE decided to round up its women and put them on display for all to see. Kelly, Maria, Michelle McCool and Mickie James took on Jillian Hall, Maurice, Natalia and Victoria in a tag match with a twist. That twist was that all these women were dressed up in sexy Christmas-themed outfits, an often overlooked step in the women's revolution, this. The action in this match is predictably tepid, but what makes it even worse is the commentary. All 6 men from the broadcast team share the mic for this one, taking it in turns to make lecherous comments and ask each other who their favourites are among the women's roster. They pay absolutely no attention to the in-ring action, which ended in under 5 minutes after McCool pinned Hall. We've talked about it enough during this list, but it bears repeating just how little respect WWE showed towards its female performers during this time period. And if you can believe it, we're not done with that topic yet. But first, number 4, Matt Hardy versus Mark Henry at SummerSlam. 2 months after winning the belt in his tour de crap with Big Show and Kane, Mark Henry was set to defend the ECW title against Matt Hardy at SummerSlam. The two had been steadily building to this match over a number of weeks, with many hoping that Matt could help the champion to his best match yet. Spoiler, he didn't. Matt had time to hit a single twist of fate on Henry before his opponent's manager, Tony Atlas, pulled him out of the ring. This led to a DQ, a Henry beatdown, and then a Hardy Boys reunion to pop the crowd. It sounds like straightforward stuff until you remember that this was a Big 4 pay-per-view match and was supposed to be for one of the company's world titles. ECW had been dead in the water for some time, but this match really hammered that point home. The title's prestige had been sacrificed for the sake of a cheap nostalgia pop from the crowd, who honestly cared more about Matt and Jeff laying out Henry than the title itself. It may not have been a surprise to anyone following WWE at the time, but looking back at the mistreatment of the ECW title in 2008, it's just sad. Number 3, Beth Phoenix and Melina versus Maria and Ashley at WrestleMania 24. This is our last women's match, we promise. We won't drag Beth Phoenix's name through the mud anymore. The Glamazon teamed with the Queen of Scream Melina to take on Maria and Ashley Mazzaro at WrestleMania 24 in a very special match. It was a Playboy Bunny Mania Lumberjill match. What does that even mean? Well, it meant that fans were forced to sit through 5 minutes of terrible wrestling immediately after Shawn Michaels retired Ric Flair in one of the most emotional Mania bouts of all time. Unfortunately, as well as the bad premise and worse timing, the action wasn't especially good either. Basic moves were botched, simple sequences thrown out of whack, and the Lumberjills added precisely 0 excitement to the whole damn thing. Once again, not the wrestlers' fault at all. They were let down by so many people above them, but you can see why so many fans were down on women's wrestling when this sort of thing was all that they had to go by. Number 2, Big Show versus the Great Khali at Backlash. We thought about giving this spot to Khali's WWE title match with Triple H at SummerSlam, but Trips did a pretty decent job carrying the Punjabi Playboy to an okay-ish match. Big Show, however, wasn't so lucky. The two titans faced off at Backlash, and yet another of Vince McMahon's naughty dreams come to life. Without being unkind, Khali is not a good wrestler, but he works best when positioned against smaller, more agile opponents who he can throw around. You may have noticed that Big Show is not that opponent. The most impressive part of the contest came when Sho picked Khali up for a big old body slam. That sounds like it should be the finish, right? Well, it wasn't. The finish was a not quite as good choke slam, but at least it meant the match was over. Swings and roundabouts. Number 1, Santino Marella versus the Honky Tonk Man at Cyber Sunday. During Santino Marella's Intercontinental title reign of 2008, he debuted a fantastic gimmick called the Honkometer. Santino compared his own IC title reign up against that of longest reigning champion ever, the Honky Tonk Man. This was all done to subliminally persuade WWE fans to vote for Honky as Marella's opponent at the viewer-controlled Cyber Sunday. And they did, just about. Roddy Piper nearly won, which would have been hilarious. The vote led to a painfully drawn-out segment between the fake Elvis and the fake Italian. Honky talked some smack, Santino talked some smack, Honky did a little dance, Santino did a little dance. It was all pretty rubbish. Then came the actual match, which ended in 66 seconds after Santino's girlfriend Beth Phoenix tripped the Honky Tonk Man up. All that build-up, all that stalling, all that awful dancing for this? Fans weren't expecting Dynamite Kid vs. Tiger Mask, but WWE could have pulled out something more entertaining than this, surely. Why not just have Honky win the belt for a feel-good moment? He's cool, he's cocky, he's bad, and it's not like the belt was being treated with much legitimacy at the time anyway.